The knock came at 9:47 on a Tuesday night. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the clock on the garage wall, counting down the minutes until I could justify going to bed. That's what life had become, counting down minutes, getting through days. I walked around to the front of the house and saw a shape through the door glass. Tall, broad shoulders, an expensive black coat. There was a Mercedes sitting in my gravel driveway that I had never seen before. I opened the door. While standing on my porch, soaking wet from the October rain, was my brother Gerald. Gerald Shaw, 61 years old. A man I had not spoken a single word to in 15 years. He didn't say hello. He didn't apologize for showing up unannounced in the middle of the night after a decade and a half of silence. He just reached into his coat pocket and held up a photograph. The man in the photo was sitting in a wheelchair in what looked like a hospital common room. Thinner than I remembered. Longer hair, a beard, staring at a wall like there was nothing behind his eyes. But I knew that face. I had known that face for 35 years. "Dustin," I said. "Get in the car, Leonard," Gerald said. "I know where he is." My name is Leonard Shaw. I'm 63 years old. I own a small auto repair garage outside Billings, Montana, or I used to, before my knees started having opinions about everything. These days, I mostly keep the place running by telling other people what to do and trying not to get in the way. I want to be upfront about who I am, because this story involves my family, and some of it doesn't reflect well on my judgment. I trusted the wrong person for a long time. I want to own that. My first wife, Beverly, passed away 7 years ago. Ovarian cancer, diagnosed late, gone within 14 months of the diagnosis. We were married for 29 years. She was a nurse. She was the kind of person who remembered every birthday of every person she'd ever met and meant it every single time. After she died, I was not doing well. I won't dress it up more than that. My son Dustin was a rock through all of it. He drove up from Denver every other weekend for 6 months. Called me every morning at 7 a.m. just to check in. Didn't make a big deal out of it. Just showed up, the way Beverly always said a person's character shows up, quietly, without announcement. Dustin built a mid-size construction company from the ground up starting at 26. By the time he was 35, he had 80 employees, solid contracts across 3 states, and a reputation in the industry for being straight with people. His daughter Lily was born when he was 27. Her mother wasn't in the picture long, but Dustin was a good father. That kid adored him. Carolyn came into my life about 2 years after Beverly passed. We met at a community fundraiser. She was 43, sharp, good-looking, easy to talk to. She was working as a financial officer at the time. We dated for about a year, got married quietly at the courthouse. I didn't need a big ceremony. She said she didn't either. Looking back, there were things I should have paid more attention to. Small things. The way she'd changed the subject when I asked about her finances. The way she and Dustin were never quite comfortable in the same room, even though she always said the right things about him. The way she became the CFO of Dustin's company about 8 months after we got married. An opportunity that came up, she said, and Dustin had offered it to her as a way to help family. And I thought it was generous of him. I thought it was generous of her to take it. I was wrong about a lot of things. 4 years ago, Dustin went on a hiking trip with 2 colleagues into the Rocky Mountain backcountry in southern Wyoming. It was the kind of trip he'd done a dozen times. He knew those trails. He never came back. Search and rescue found his pack near a ridge. A broken trekking pole lodged in a rock face below. No other signs. No body. His 2 colleagues said he'd gone ahead at a fork in the trail, and they'd assumed he'd turned back. Nobody raised the alarm for 18 hours. The county sheriff ran the search for 6 weeks. The state police assisted for another month after that. 18 months after the disappearance, the court issued a legal declaration of death. I hired a private investigator. Spent $14,000 I didn't have. Got nothing useful in return. Carolyn was steady through all of it. That's the word I'd use. Steady. Not falling apart, but not cold either. Just there. Handling things. Making calls. Dealing with paperwork. She organized the memorial service. She sat beside me when the judge signed the declaration and held my hand when I couldn't get a full breath. I thought she was holding me up. I didn't know she was the reason I'd fallen in the first place. I stood in the doorway for a long moment looking at Gerald. The last time I'd seen him was at my father's kitchen table, 15 years ago. Both of us saying things that couldn't be unsaid. It was about money. It's almost always about money, and about the way Gerald had handled the estate after Dad passed. I'd felt cheated. Maybe I was right, maybe I wasn't, but I'd told him to stay out of my life, and he had. I respected him for that, at least. Gerald was a lot of things, but he wasn't someone who begged. And yet here he was, as standing in the rain on my porch with a photograph of my son. "You've got 60 seconds, I said. "Start talking." He didn't waste any of them. "I've been a private investigator for 8 years, he said. "Started after my second divorce. Turns out I'm good at finding things people try to hide. 2 years ago I saw a news segment, local Denver station, about the memorial foundation Carolyn set up in Dustin's name. Big event, lots of cameras. She looked good. Too good for a widow, if you know what I mean." "She's not a widow," I said. "I'm still alive." "You know what I mean," Gerald said. I did. "The life insurance payout is what got my attention," he continued. Dustin's policy paid out $850,000 to his estate 6 months after the declaration. Carolyn had signature authority on the estate accounts as executor. That's a lot of money moving through one person's hands. So I started looking into her. Not because you asked me to. I knew you wouldn't. But because something was off, and I couldn't let it go. He pulled a manila envelope from inside his coat, held it out to me. I took it. Inside were printed bank statements, wire transfer records, a chain of emails, and 3 photographs. The first photo was Carolyn. The second was a man I didn't recognize. Late 40s, expensive haircut, the kind of tan you get from a place that costs money to get to. The third photo showed them together at a restaurant booth, leaning across the table, was clearly comfortable with each other. The date stamp in this corner read 12 days after Dustin disappeared. "That's Philip Merritt," Gerald said, "financial broker out of Denver. He and Carolyn have been running a joint offshore account in the Cayman Islands for at least 3 years. The account was opened 4 months after she became CFO of Dustin's company." I looked at the wire transfer records. The amounts were not small. Over 28 months, was just over $1.4 million had moved from Dustin's company operating accounts into shell entities that traced back to Merritt. "Dustin found out," Gerald said. "Look at the email, 3rd page." I found it. It was from Dustin's company address, sent to Carolyn's work email, marked urgent. He'd found discrepancies in the quarterly accounts. He was requesting an immediate meeting. He was threatening to bring in outside auditors if he didn't get answers within 48 hours. And the email was dated 3 days before he went on that hiking trip. I set the papers down on the side table by the door. I didn't trust my hands with them anymore. "She had him disappeared," I said. "She and Merritt arranged it," Gerald said. "But Leonard, he's not dead. That photograph I showed you, that's from 6 days ago. Dustin is alive. He's been held at a private psychiatric facility outside Laramie, Wyoming, under the name Daniel Cole, admitted as a voluntary patient following what the intake records describe as a severe depressive episode after a hiking accident. No family contacts on file. The bills paid through a trust administered by a law firm connected to Merritt." The rain was loud on the porch roof. Somewhere down the road, a tree branch cracked in the wind. "Get in the car," Gerald said again. "I've been in contact with an FBI agent, Patricia Owens, Financial Crimes Unit out of Denver, For the past 6 months. She has a warrant. She has a field team. Tonight is the night we move. Because Merritt has been acting nervous, and if he decides Dustin is a loose end, he can't afford to keep. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I grabbed my jacket off the hook by the door. Didn't bother locking up behind me. The drive to Laramie was a little over 3 hours. Gerald drove. I sat in the passenger seat of that Mercedes and went through every page of the envelope twice. About an hour in, I made myself ask the question I'd been avoiding. How long has she known where he was? From the beginning, Gerald said. She helped set it up. The facility director, a doctor, an Arnold Webb, is connected to Merritt through a medical consulting arrangement that goes back 5 years. Webb arranged the intake under the false identity. He's been managing Dustin's sedation protocol personally. Sedation. Low-dose long-term, a combination of sedatives and antipsychotic medication, enough to keep him disoriented and compliant. The general staff at the facility have no idea. They genuinely believe he's a brain injury patient with no family. Webb handles his chart directly. I put the papers back in the envelope, set it on the floor by my feet. She sat next to me, I said. At the memorial. She held my hand. Gerald didn't respond to that. There was nothing useful to say. She let me grieve him for 4 years, I said. She sat across from me at dinner every night, knowing he was in a wheelchair in Wyoming. She watched me fall apart, and she didn't say a word. I know, Gerald said. Lily thinks her father is dead. I know. Oh, Leonard? I looked out the window at the dark Wyoming highway. The mountains were out there somewhere in the black, huge and invisible. I reached down and took off my wedding ring, held it for a second, then set it in the cup holder between us. Gerald glanced at it, looked back at the road. Neither of us said another word for the next 90 minutes. We pulled into the visitor parking lot of Ridgeline Recovery Center at 12:41 in the morning. The facility looked exactly like the kind of place that costs a lot of money to look like nothing is wrong. Modern building, clean lines, landscaped grounds even in October, big windows with soft lighting behind them. A sign near the entrance in calm, reassuring letters, Ridgeline Recovery Center, healing through compassionate care. Gerald killed the engine, but didn't move to get out. Before we go in, he said, you need to understand something. The staff inside, the nurses, the aides, was it the people who've been taking care of him day to day? They don't know. As far as they're concerned, Daniel Cole is a real patient who had a real accident. They're not part of this. Don't come in hot. I know how to walk into a room, I said. I know you do. I'm saying it anyway. He looked at me. Agent Owens and her team are staged 3 miles out. The moment we confirm Dustin is inside and make contact, I send her one text and they move. Our job is to get eyes on him, confirm his identity, and get him out to the parking lot. That's it. We don't confront Webb. We don't make accusations. We stay calm, and we let the FBI do what the FBI does. And if Webb shows up while we're in there? Gerald was quiet for a second. Then we deal with it. We got out of the car. The woman at the front desk was young, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of tired eyes that come from working the overnight shift somewhere quiet. Gerald laid out the story smoothly. He was Daniel Cole's cousin, traced through an online genealogy service after years of searching. I was Daniel's uncle. We'd driven from Billings the moment we got confirmation. We had written authorization from the trust administrator allowing a family visit. He slid a folder of documents across the desk. She examined them, typed something into her computer, frowned slightly. My pulse was running about 20 beats above where it should have been, and then she looked up and smiled. Daniel is usually still in the common room at this hour, she said. He has trouble sleeping. I'll take you back. The hallway smelled like industrial cleaner and something warm from the kitchen. Leftover dinner, maybe. We passed a row of rooms with the doors half open, televisions on low, people in beds, in chairs, in their own private distances. I had taken Beverly to a place like this in her final 3 weeks. I had hated every minute of being in that building. I hated this one more. But the common room was at the end of the hall. Large windows on the far wall, black with the nighttime outside. A television in the corner playing a nature documentary on low volume. A few residents scattered around. An older woman doing a jigsaw puzzle, a man asleep in a recliner. And by the window, in a wheelchair, facing the glass, was my son. I stopped walking. Gerald put his hand on my arm, not to stop me, just to steady me, because apparently I needed it. Dustin was thinner than I'd ever seen him. His hair was longer, his beard was full, and he was wearing the clothes of a man who hadn't chosen them himself. Sweatpants, a gray t-shirt, hospital slippers on his feet. His hands were in his lap. He was looking at his own reflection in the dark glass. The nurse said she'd give us a few minutes and stepped back toward the doorway. Gerald and I walked over, pulled 2 chairs up beside the wheelchair, sat down like we were visiting a friend, like this was normal, and like my chest wasn't about to come apart. Gerald spoke first, quiet enough that only the 3 of us could hear. "Dustin," he said, "my name is Gerald. This is your dad." Dustin's eyes moved from the window to Gerald's face. Slow, like moving through something thick. There was no recognition there, just a vague, medicated calm that made my stomach turn. Then his eyes moved to me. Something happened. It was small, a flicker, a shift, something behind the fog. His brow pulled together like a man trying to remember a word that's right on the edge of his tongue. "Dad," he said. Not a statement, not even quite a question, just the word like he was testing whether it was allowed. "Yeah," I said. "It's me. I'm right here." His face went through something I don't have a clean word for. Confusion and relief, and something that looked like grief, all at the same time. His hand came up from his lap, slow, uncertain, and I took it in both of mine. "They told me I didn't have anyone," he said. His voice was thick, slightly slurred from whatever they'd been giving him. "They said there was no family. No one was looking." "They lied," I said. I never stopped. That's when I heard footsteps behind us. Fast ones. Dr. Arnold Webb was younger than I'd expected, mid-40s, well-dressed even at nearly 1 in the morning, with the kind of rigid posture that comes from a man used to being the authority in every room he enters. He crossed the common room in long strides, his expression caught somewhere between alarm and the performance of calm. "I wasn't notified about a family visit," he said. Gerald stood. He was a full 3 inches taller than Webb, and he used every one of them. "We have written authorization from the trust administrator," Gerald said. "Your front desk already cleared us." "The trust administrator clears financial matters," Webb said, his voice sharpening. "Medical visits require my personal sign-off. I'm going to need to ask you to step out while I review your credentials." He reached into his coat pocket. Gerald's voice stayed level. "I wouldn't make that call, Doctor." Webb's hand stopped. "I've been recording this conversation since we walked in," Gerald said, "along with the 6 months of documentation I've already forwarded to Agent Patricia Owens of the FBI. Bank records, wire transfers, intake records, your medical consulting arrangement with Philip Merritt. She has a warrant and a field team 3 miles from this building right now." He took out his phone, turned the screen toward Webb so he could see the name on the contact. "All I have to do is send 1 text." The color went out of Webb's face. "Here is what happens next," Gerald said. "You walk back to your office. You sit down. You do not contact anyone, and you wait. Because the moment you do anything to interfere with us or with this man in this chair, I will make sure the obstruction charge lands on top of everything else they're building against you." Webb looked at Dustin, looked at me, looked at Gerald. Then he turned and walked out of the room. Gerald sent the text. "Let's get him outside," he said. We had Dustin out to the parking lot in under 10 minutes. The night air hit us all at once. Cold, clean, the kind of Wyoming October that smells like pine and coming snow. I pushed the wheelchair and Gerald walked ahead, checking the lot. I'm checking the road. Dustin tilted his head back and looked up at the sky. I don't think he'd been outside at night in a long time. Maybe years. "Stars," he said quietly. "Yeah," I said. "Lot of them out tonight." He didn't say anything else, just kept looking up. 3 minutes later, the headlights came over the hill. Not one set. 4 FBI field vehicles moving fast and quiet. No sirens. Pulling into the access road with the kind of coordinated precision that tells you these people have done this before. Behind them, a county ambulance. Agent Patricia Owens was out of the lead vehicle before it fully stopped. She was in her mid-40s. Practical clothes. No wasted movements. She shook Gerald's hand, looked at me, looked at Dustin. "We've got units at the Merritt residence and at your home address in Billings simultaneously," she said to me. "Carolyn and Merritt are being picked up right now." I nodded. "Webb is in his office," Gerald said. "We'll handle Webb," she said. She turned to the paramedics coming up behind her. "Let's get him assessed." The hospital in Laramie was 20 minutes away. I rode in the ambulance with Dustin. Gerald followed in the Mercedes. The paramedics worked quietly. Blood pressure, pupil response, vitals. Dustin let them do what they needed to do. He was more alert outside the facility than he'd been inside it, like the night air had woken something up in him that the building had been keeping down. But he answered their questions in short sentences. Yes, he knew his name. Yes, he knew what year it was, roughly. No, he didn't know exactly what medications he'd been given, or for how long. At some point in the ambulance, he looked over at me. "How did you find me?" he asked. "Gerald did the work," I said. "He's been at it for 2 years." Dustin was quiet for a moment. "I thought Gerald and you weren't speaking." "We weren't." He looked at the ambulance ceiling. 4 years is a long time to not be speaking to someone." "Yeah," I said. "We're working on that." The neurologist at Laramie Regional was a calm, methodical woman who explained everything in plain terms, which I appreciated. Long-term low-dose sedation combined with antipsychotic medication. No evidence of permanent neurological damage. The fog Dustin had been living in was chemical, not structural, with proper tapering, proper nutrition, proper sleep, proper care. She expected significant improvement within weeks and a full functional recovery within months. So, she said it matter-of-factly, like it was just information, like she hadn't just handed me back something I'd spent 4 years believing was gone forever. I sat in a chair outside his room for a while after that, and didn't do much of anything. Gerald came and sat next to me around 2 in the morning. We drank bad coffee from a vending machine and didn't talk for a while. At some point he said, "Owens texted me. Carolyn and Merritt are in custody. Webb took a deal. Full cooperation." "Good," I said. "Fraud, embezzlement, kidnapping, false imprisonment, identity fraud. Federal charges. The U.S. Attorney's Office is going to be busy." "Good," I said again. We sat there a while longer. "I should have called you," Gerald said finally, "when Dustin first disappeared. I had a feeling from the start, and I should have picked up the phone." "You called now," I said. He nodded slowly. "Took me too long." "Gerald," I looked at him. You drove to my house in the middle of the night in the rain, and you gave me back my son. We can sort out the rest later." He didn't respond to that, but something in his face settled. It was almost 3 in the morning when they let me into Dustin's room. He was propped up against the pillows, an IV line in his arm running fluids, and the first round of a careful tapering protocol. And he looked tired, in the way a person looks when they've been tired for so long they've forgotten what rested feels like. But his eyes were clearer than they'd been in the common room. More present. When I walked in, he turned his head and looked at me. Really looked at me. "Hey, Dad," he said. Not foggy, not uncertain. Just his voice, the one I'd known his whole life, the one I'd heard in my head for 4 years trying to remember exactly how it sounded. I sat down next to the bed and didn't say anything for a second. "Lily," he said. "Tell me about Lily." "She's 8, I said. "She's been staying with me since Carolyn was arrested. She's doing okay. Oh, she's a tough kid." "She get that from Beverly," he said. "She did," I agreed. "But a little from you, too." He smiled at that. Small, tired, real. "She's going to lose her mind when she sees you," I said. "I've been trying to hold on to her face," Dustin said quietly. "For 4 years I kept trying to remember exactly what she looked like, the sound of her laugh. But the medication, every time I got close to something real, I'd go back under." He paused. I knew something was wrong, and I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. I just couldn't hold on to it long enough to do anything about it. "You don't have to hold on to it anymore," I told him. "It's done." He nodded, closed his eyes for a moment. "I want to see her," he said. "Soon." 2 weeks, I said. "Let's get you strong enough first." I brought Lily to the hospital on a Saturday morning, 16 days later. She'd been staying with me in Billings. The FBI had assigned a family liaison who came by twice a week, a therapist named Doctor. But Carol Reed was helping her process the fact that her father was alive, that the story she'd been told was not the true one, that the world was different than she'd understood it to be. Kids are more adaptable than people give them credit for. Lily was working through it in the way she worked through most things. Head down, quietly, occasionally coming into the kitchen at night to sit with me and not say much. On the drive to Laramie, she held my hand the entire way. "What if he looks different?" she asked at one point. "He does look a little different," I said. "But he sounds exactly the same." She thought about that. "Okay," she said. Dustin was sitting up in a chair by the window when we walked in. Better than 2 weeks ago. More color, steadier, more himself. He saw Lily in the doorway, and his whole face changed. She stood there for about 3 seconds. Then she crossed the room and wrapped both arms around his neck and didn't let go. I stepped back out into the hallway and leaned against the wall. Oh, Gerald was there. He'd driven up from Denver that morning. We stood together outside the room, and neither of us said anything for a while. There wasn't much to say. Through the window, we could see Dustin holding his daughter, both of them crying, both of them holding on like they intended to stay that way. By September, Dustin had moved back to Denver. He was rebuilding his company, new CFO, outside auditors. So the kind of systems you put in place when you've learned what the absence of them can cost you. He was in therapy twice a week. He was coaching Lily's soccer team on Saturday mornings. Some nights he called me late, after Lily was in bed. We'd talk for an hour about nothing in particular. Those were good nights. Gerald came up to Billings most months. We'd sit on the back porch of my place and drink coffee, and occasionally talk about the 15 years we'd wasted being stubborn. We hadn't resolved everything between us. Probably we wouldn't resolve all of it. But we were in the same room again, which is where you have to start. One evening in late September, the 3 of us, me, Dustin, Gerald, were sitting on my porch watching the sun go down behind the Montana hills. Lily was inside, asleep on the couch with the television on. The kind of quiet evening that used to feel empty and now just felt like quiet. "I've been thinking about what comes next," Dustin said. "You don't have to figure that out yet," I told him. "I know, but I want to." He was looking out at the hills. There are other people out there in the same situation I was in. Families that don't have a Gerald, don't have someone who kept digging. He paused. "I want to do something about that." Gerald looked up. "I've got contacts in the PI network, people who work wrongful commitment cases specifically. When you're ready, I can make introductions." "I'm ready," Dustin said. The sun finished going down. The sky went from orange to purple to the deep blue that comes just before the stars show up. What Lily's laughter drifted out through the screen door. She'd woken up. The television had gotten her. I sat there between my son and my brother and listened to that sound. 4 years ago, I was in this same yard counting down the minutes until I could justify going to bed. Getting through days. That's what grief does. It shrinks everything down to the next hour, and then the next. I'm not counting down anymore. That's enough. That's everything. The most dangerous person in your life is never the stranger at the door. It's the one who already has a key. They stole 4 years from us, but they couldn't steal the one thing that brought him home. The fact that I never once believed he was gone.